Hey guys, can you write in the chat that you can hear us? So I think that we are online. At least I can see it on my second screen that Tomek is presenting something on the screen, but I'm not sure if you guys can hear us because nobody confirms in the chat. There are 10 people almost already watching. Maybe there's some problem with sound. 11 people are joining. Tomek, I think that they cannot hear us.
1, 2, 1, 2. How are you guys? Okay.
I will ask guys on the Slack maybe. Yes, we can. Okay, Piotr says that they can hear us. Marta says hi. Okay, guys, how are you today? Just I see that people are joining. It's super amazing. 12 people. Tomek is preparing his superpower secrets. Okay, so I guess there is some delay probably. So yes, we can hear you well. I can hear you perfectly. Hi, Alejandro. Hi, Andri. So, Tomek, I guess we can be starting. So, how are you today?
I'm great, really pumped to share some stuff that I like about TypeScript with you guys.
Yes,
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're all thrilled actually because I can assure you that the community was really pumped to have you and your tricks on the show. So just before we can start, just Tomek, can you just tell us a couple of words about yourself? Because I remember we have get in touch when it was NG Summit last year.
Yeah, exactly, in Wrocław.
In Wrocław.
Yeah.
But for now, I guess for some people who may not know who you are, what you do, despite that you're Angular trainer and consultant, just tell us a couple of sentences. Do you have cats maybe or
Yeah,
or
sure.
something like that?
No, I had kids though, so close. It worse or better from time to time. Yeah, depends. So other than that, yeah, I'm working with front end stuff all entirely really, and as you said, I'm a trainer, but I also develop apps on day-to-day basis. So my main focus outside of just building code is developer productivity and overall user experience. But I'm not thinking only about users as you would normally see the people that use our apps, but also as developers, as users of some tools, some languages, and so on. So whenever I see something that I think that can help us, I'm really that makes my day. So that's where all the Twitter shares came from. Yeah. So, and I really believe that like TypeScript is probably one of two, maybe three best things that happened to front end development in past decade at least.
Yes, we all
Yeah.
agree on the awesomeness of TypeScript. So why don't we start? Why don't we go into your secret recipes? And
Yeah.
could you please maybe zoom in a little bit?
How about now?
For me, it's perfect. Guys, can you confirm that you can see well enough the screen and the font on the YouTube stream? Let's wait a second, maybe. We have like maybe 10 or 15 seconds delay, so just
Sure.
give them maybe some more time. Okay, I see confirmation. So Andri give +1. So let the show begin. Tomek, go on.
Yeah, let's roll with that. So yeah, big disclaimer on at first, because yeah, we're all pumped, but I'm not like an expert on anything. I just, as I said, I'm focusing on the stuff that I really see that brings some value, and most of those tips are just based on what I encountered in my own code. So it's by no means like full overview of TypeScript. Yeah, but let's start. Enough disclaimers. So first of all, I would like to show you how close is TypeScript to normal JavaScript, and it really, you can write normal JavaScript in TypeScript file and already see the some awesomeness. So for example, I have here some clean, more or less clean Angular project, but that's just an example. But if it was just any other JavaScript or TypeScript file without maybe other library, I would probably at some point look for some element on the page to attach some events maybe. So let's try that. So my case here is that I want to find an input and get its value, maybe attach some event later, right? So document query selector, and I'm writing something like this, and now I want to get the value, right? Value. As you can see, there is no value on this element. It should be. I was just looking for an input. So what's the issue here? Probably some of you were screaming at the screens that I made a typo here. So it's just, you know, JavaScript at this point, no like special typing on my part, but I already see the value of TypeScript. If I really put an input here, yeah, you can see that it now recognizes this as a HTML input element and shows me that the value is actually here, right? So how does it work? If you look into the definition, it's kind of nested, one thing into another, but at some point there is something like this. So basically, every tag known to HTML is listed here and mapped to a list of properties that are available on this and on this very tag. So that's why when I use this, what is really a string that it recognizes as a string literal input, it returns me a proper, at this point, HTML input element, right? So already quite a win. Now, just a word of disclaimer: as you saw on those typings definitions, it's pretty simple. So it works for an element selectors only. So if I did something like well, do some more complex selector, it won't work anymore, right? So it's now it just recognizes this as like this general element type. So, and by the way, whenever you see this quite general behavior and you want to limit the result to some more specific type, there is quite big. You can be quite sure that this function or a class or something probably is a generic. So you can even, I sometimes go into the definition and look at it, but sometimes I'm just guessing at this point. So query selector is actually a generic, so I can type it at here what I was expecting from this selector, right? So I can do, you know, HTML input element, right? And again, I have the value available. Yeah, so let's work on this some more. So let's attach an event listener. And let's say I want to have a click event. Okay. And I want to check the mouse position during this click. So I don't know about you, but I have really, really weak memory. So that's one of the main reasons I love TypeScript so much. It's just like a handy documentation. So as you can see, there is client X, client Y, and again, that's take care of this. That's because it recognized this click event. If this was something else, if this was like what could it be, like change, right, or input event, it wouldn't recognize it as a mouse event, so it wouldn't show us the client X attribute.
Tomek, may I have a question?
Sure.
So I just want to clarify. So this string that you put as a parameter is being recognized as a string like string literal type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So we can actually use the actual value of a string that is like a literal type, right?
Exactly. So it's a bit more complex implementation because they use key off and they have this mapping that is again a bit more, like 3 levels deep. But you can think of it like if you have a type, let's say, let's say click, which is a click, and you have a type that is mouse enter, let's say, and it's and it's like you would have a function that is really like you have this kind of definition, right? It's well, sorry, function listener, right? And this one takes a event that is a click and returns us, let's say, an object, and the second one is an event that takes a mouse enter and returns us a number, let's say, right? So it takes the correct, parameter type and just returns, corresponding type from the function, something like this. Or in that case, it would be like the type would be here in the callback. It's more complex, as I said, in the actual implementation because there are many more possibilities, and this kind of definition doesn't scale that much, that well. But it's basically the what you said. It's matching it against the string literal.
Great.
Okay, so there is another issue with this code. Actually, let me just fix that one. Click, and that may not be so obvious right now until we run it. But let's say we do something like use. Let's say we have a collection of values and we want to find like my ID from those values. And my ID is the one that is, let's say, let's find one that is divisible by 9. Right, and in the next line, I want to log it with maybe some formatting. Okay, so this code, this bug should be more obvious, probably. Do you see it?
This is a question to me or our audience?
Yeah, it can, if you can see it, we already have some interaction, so I don't want to be the only one speaking. So if you see
cool.
it, you can.
I mean, yeah, you want to find a value which is divisible by 9, and I don't see any value that is divisible by 9 in this array.
Yeah, but TypeScript, yeah, just assumes that okay, this returns me, the number based on the fact that this is an array of numbers. So okay, this is a number, and I can do number thing on this, right? So this is not safe.
Yeah, because we can have null. We can have null.
Exactly. So if we actually look at this definition, there is, I can't point the mouse here, but there is either T, which is a
generic value, generic type, or either undefined, right?
Yeah, and that's because TypeScript is in TypeScript every type is by default nullable, so the undefined or null value will match. Will still match, and you can do all the, in this case, number thing on this undefined value, right? So, and this is the case here as well. So that's often when I write TypeScript, I'm so happy that okay, all my types flows perfectly, but actually there is no such element at this point on the page, right? So we can make this improve this and make TypeScript care about this possible null value also. If we go to tsconfig and restrict, yeah, and pass strict null checks as true. In that
now
case,
it's going to show the error, right?
Yes, both errors are visible clearly, and TypeScript will, it just reads this as an error because, as you can see, number of undefined, possibly undefined. Very nice explanation.
Tomek, can we go back for a second to this config? Let's stress out because.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, I really enjoyed this switch or feature switch, let's say, because it saves you, it gives you a lot of safety when it comes to null checks. So I think that you guys who are watching can really, let's say, resonate with this, that this can help us or help you check all those possible cases when you have those null checks. And remember, Tomek, do you remember when you had to do all those if statements to check nulls just to ensure, okay, I maybe have null here, but here TypeScript would do all those nasty or like tedious work for you.
Yeah. So I still have to do it, but I don't have to remember about it. So that's the beauty of it, right?
Exactly.
Because right now, I need to make it safe. So either if or or text something. Well, doesn't work like this. Oh, okay. TS-lint screams at me because that's not how you should write it anyway.
Yeah.
So but that would work in just TypeScript version. It's just TS-lint. Yeah.
So here you don't have to remember. TypeScript would tell you that you have possible null here, and you have to check it, right? But also when you do this as a client, you of the code that you write, you will be safe also that you will not have null, because internally this like the library or whatever you're using would have to care about this null checks. And if you do this, you can also always see that this library will never ever return me null, for example. This is also covered in this case. So this is what I was referring. You can write the code for like as for example library or for any other developers, and always like give this let's say how to say this ease that he can be sure that there is no chance this would ever return null, because you already covered this because you were forced to.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it's like if you had really like a low level tests, unit tests for it.
Yeah, this is very, very also important, that without this you would have to have all those unit tests, low-level unit tests to cover those cases.
Oh, and that actually reminds me another tip that can be here. So if you have this kind of issue, when you have this this flag turned on, and you actually know that some expression returns true in a specific scenario, there is an escape hatch. You can do what is it? You can do this or can't. TS-lint again. Yes, but as you can see, I had a TypeScript error, and
Object is possibly undefined.
Yes, and with what is called postfix expression, it basically says that I assure TypeScript that this will be available. That this basically like deletes the undefined from the type.
Yeah, but right now TypeScript is forbidding you to.
Because it's an escape hatch. So we just employ the security rule and we are omitting it. So TS-lint in this settings has this screams at us because that's not the best style.
Okay, Tomek, Alejandro has a question. Let me put it up. I like restrictness that tsconfig options like the one you just used gave me to be helped by TypeScript. My question is, should we be as restrictive as possible when working with TypeScript? Okay, I like having that approach, but I wonder what you normally do or what you recommend on that matter, or would you say it really depends on the project or the team?
Yeah, sure. So it is a bit a matter of opinion. There are some specific scenario where one or other solution is preferred. So there is actually a lot of those restrictions. If you just type no in tsconfig, you will see bunch of them. And you can turn just all of them on by saying strict true. But I've noticed in my practice that it makes migration or upgrade of TypeScript a bit more painful, because new restrictions comes in quite often in new versions of TypeScript. So strict true turns all of them. So when you update TypeScript, it may be the case where you have like 2 or 3 new restrictions and your whole code breaks. So I prefer to have quite a lot of restrictions, but turn them on case by case scenario. And the second aspect of this is if you start from scratch, it's definitely good to figure out with the team what kind of restriction do you want to have and turn as many as possible on. But if you migrate from JavaScript, you usually it's better to start with no restriction just to make the migration easier, because otherwise there will probably be like a week of of fixing your JavaScript code for the migration. So
Cool.
I don't know if this answers the question, but yeah, there is no, I think, simple yes or no answer.
As usual,
Other
it
than that.
depends, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but if I when I start, I usually like strict null checks and no implicit any, for example, is a no-brainer for me, and otherwise.
Tomek?
Okay. Yeah, I think
We have lost connection for a second because my LAN cable just flipped over, but I believe I managed to connect it again. So I don't see this disruption yet on the tablet, but I believe we are already online. So
okay.
so just wait a second, guys. Can you confirm that we are online back? Just give maybe guys. Tomek?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, go on. Okay, everything is fine.
Let's go on then.
It's funny because we had 10 people, now we have almost 20. We are growing up.
All right. So let's keep the
Alejandro
number
says, thank you for
5.
replying. All right, let's continue.
Thanks for the question. So yeah, let's take an example of this migration thing. By the way, so I will add some JavaScript file. By the way, a question for the audience: do you know what is the least performance sorting algorithm? Who will answer this one?
Let's wait. I mean, the issue with YouTube Live is that it has sometimes like 10 to even 20 seconds delay.
Okay.
But so I will rephrase the question, or maybe or say it again. The question is, Tomek, as far as I understand, what is the default sorting algorithm in JavaScript, right?
No, not the default, the least performant one.
The one which is used for lists, right?
Yes. It's like just a funny, curious thing, but it's
No,
not practical
you mean
at all.
the least performant, or not?
The least performant, yeah.
Okay. What is the least performant? The question to audience sorting algorithm. I might have something in my mind, but maybe let's wait for guys. Nobody is brave enough to answer.
We use this as an example for working with threads on JavaScript, for web workers, because it hangs the browser very, very performantly. It's a BOGO sort.
BOGO sort?
It's it's when you check if your collection is already sorted. If it's not, you just randomly reshuffle it and check if it's sorted.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah, so that's just to wake you up, but that's an algorithm. So if you try it with like 14 or 15 elements, it will probably hang your browser for a minute or more. But I have an implementation copied from somewhere, and it's in pure JavaScript. So I will show you how easy it is to just use in a TypeScript file. So first of all, to migrate it to your TypeScript code base. So we will change the extension, and all the bugs here that you can see are really just from TS-lint. So this is pretty common, as you can imagine, especially when you have quite strict rules about TypeScript. So, or even if you use ESLint, if you go into any legacy project and you try to employ new rules, you will end up with like thousands of issues, and usually you don't have like 2 sprints to just fix your formatting in your code. So what I usually start by doing is I start each file, each migrated or legacy file with TS-lint disable. And so I don't have any issues anymore. So that's good for this temporary moment, for that intermittent phase. And we employ a rule that whenever someone is working on a specific file, the older file, when he needs to like fix a bug or add a functionality, the first thing he does is he needs to remove this comment and then fix only this one file. So because of that strategy, we don't have this huge revolution, but rather evolution of the code, and it gradually becomes better. But for now, I will not work with TS-lint. I just want to add this as a TypeScript to my functionality. So, well, I need to, as you can see, TypeScript doesn't show any errors here. And that's also quite common if you have pretty good source code. What I mean is, for example, I was assigning a function here to a variable, and I'm not using this variable later as a handle for a string. That would be bad code anyway in any language. Use a variable for different things in one life cycle. So here,
Tomek, maybe one more important thing to maybe stress out, that even though you didn't define the type for shuffle variable, because of TypeScript inference system, it will automatically add the function type, right?
Oh yeah, that's correct. Thanks for
because it may not be obvious. You didn't put it. Okay, this var is a type of function, but you didn't define the type, right?
Yeah. So yeah, because I assign a value instantly, it also assigns a type if the value is of known type, and because this is a function, it assigns a function here.
Yeah, and one more maybe point also, when you work with the properties on the class and you do the same trick that you automatically want to infer the type by the fact that you assign the value, let's say empty string, and then you indeed also add the string type, TypeScript will complain, I don't remember from which version it started, that the trivial type definition is here, that it's not needed actually because it is deferred.
I think it's a flag also. I'm not sure if it's a TypeScript or I believe it was a TS-lint error actually. It's
okay.
Something like no, yeah. There is I think there is a flag maybe on tsconfig. In that case, yeah, but that's it's in that, if this is obvious, there is no really need to do it, right? Something like this, right? Define the type.
What does it say right now?
Yeah, it should be like, yeah, because I'm using it with a, argument, and
Yeah,
here
sure.
I was typing as a function with no argument, so it's actually more annoying
So
than
yeah, maybe
helpful.
you're right. Maybe
Yeah.
it was the case of the TS lint. I may be mistaking this feature, but I know that it actually very often pops out like showing that you should not trivially define types when it's obvious, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so as you can see, it's not that TypeScript doesn't check this file, it's just that it's pretty sensibly written, so no bad code was here. So it's already a proper TypeScript code, right? So I can, export, let's say, export this and use it in my application. Right, so really didn't work that much on that migration, as you can see. If you have this case when you are assigning something different to something entirely different to the same variable, and the code is maybe too complex to refactor just on the spot. So let's say I assigned it a string. There is again an escape hatch. You can just type it as any. It's very nasty, but it speeds up the migration process. Usually, I try to steer away from any as much as I can. But yeah, again, if this is not a trivial thing to refactor, it's one of the possible solutions. Yeah, and about this anything, as I said, I try to stay away from this. On my first project with TypeScript, actually, it was very complex domain. We were dealing with different warehouses, structures, and so on. So TypeScript was kind of a great match for this, but we almost threw it away because we didn't see the point of using it, and that's what was because we had so many any typings inside, and because of that, we after that we would have to do again casting to different types all over the place and so on. So it isn't that helpful with any. So because of that, as I said, I usually in TS-lint, in TS-config, sorry, the second restriction that I always put is no implicit any, and it helps to find this kind of places where TypeScript wasn't able to infer the type for a variable. And yeah, usually it's for like missing typings for attributes. So as you can see, I need to fix this and shuffle. What does it get? The v is actually any array. So it's a bit better because right now, at least I know it's an array, right? Okay, and by the way, one typing that I'm missing always, or one restriction that I miss in TypeScript configuration that I would love to have is to type the return of the function, because I very often just focus on the algorithm and forget to type the return, even to write the return. Just write the algorithm, and that's okay. Okay, I think it works. The algorithm is correct, but I just, forgot to return the value. And of course, if I typed it, TypeScript would complain and keep me from doing this error, right? Void need to return a value. So I would really love to have the this restriction always turned on. Return v. Okay, and now I fixed the bug. So there is no such setting in TS config, but there is actually one in TS lint. So speaking of like common restrictions, I often put, where is my TS lint? This is my main TS lint, or this one. Okay, so the restriction is type def, and we turn it on and say call signature. So we now always require type definition for the call signature, which really means the return of the functions.
So can you show us what happens if you remove this? If you remove this definition of return once you have enabled this feature? Yeah, I mean.
I actually meant to show it here.
Oh, okay. So we were synced in thoughts.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to work. Oh, I maybe that's the reason. Come on, TS lint. Oh, all right. Okay, TS lint disable. If I disabled it. So a bunch of other errors now, but as you can see there, that's the error, expected call signature to have a type def, and this is a fancy name of just saying that I was missing the type definition of the returned.
I love it.
Oh, and
amazing.
It's actually Boolean. Yeah, very helpful. Because I constantly miss the returns. Or you can actually return a wrong thing. Yeah, so of course, if the function doesn't return anything, you are now, it's required to just type it as a void. This one returns, yeah, so let's keep it here. Okay. And what else can we say? Maybe you have some questions.
Guys.
Because I have several other tips.
Yeah, Tomek has a lot of other tips. Maybe in the meantime you have exact questions that you would like to raise right now. And in the meantime, I can see that Moshe asks if you can upload this source code at the end of the session.
Sure, of course. I will extract the important stuff because this is the whole Angular application, and it just doesn't do anything really, but all the files that we worked on will be extracted and uploaded onto a repository.
Cool. So Tomek, before we come up with some suggestions, maybe you should continue with your reach, let's say, a palette of possible tips. Okay, we have a question.
Sure.
Okay, already a question. Just in time. If you add the return type, which let's say is observable, I need to import it to set it explicitly. Is that increasing the bundle size?
The type, no, it doesn't increase the bundle size.
So
it's just it's just using it as if it was an interface. So
yeah, because we already have this observable, right?
Yeah, exactly. You already have the observable here in the bundle.
Cool. So I will be in the between your super tips. I will be trying to like fit the questions as they appear,
Okay.
Tomek.
Okay. So one cool feature of TypeScript is called type guards. And what it means that you can TypeScript know when you when you write an algorithm that limits the possible values, possible types of the values. So let's say I have a type that is like my book ID, and I'm not sure if this will be a number or a string. Right, so because maybe that's just the beginning of the project, I don't know if this will be stored in Mongo database or Postgres. Probably it will be different types of IDs depending on that. But let's say that I want to log in on the somewhere in the user interface with some formatting. So let's say return formatted ID, and it will be of this book ID. So if this would be a number, I would like to have this as an uppercase. So ID would be, as you can see, there is no up to uppercase method right now. I will try to write it. And as you can see, as you can see, it assumes that it can be a number at this point, so it doesn't allow me, to use it right now. So what is this? Probably. Oh, okay, string. So if this was any JavaScript code and you wanted to guard yourself against this scenario, you would probably use something like if. So if ID or type of ID equals string, then we want to return the uppercase version of it. And as you can see, it doesn't scream at me anymore, and even it shows me all the other possibilities of a string type. So it figured that I've already took care of this being possibly a number, so it only leaves a string in the in this block, right? So, and what about the second possibility? Let's say if this is a number, I want to add some decimal points. So as you can see right now, because it also understands that I had a return here, it already knows that only thing that is possible at this point in this function is number, right? So it allows me to do the numbery thing. Okay, so this is a type guard, one of the possible type guards. So it will also work with switch statements and so on. It's quite smart.
Tomek.
Yeah.
So yeah, types guard are pretty cool because they are allowing us to conditionally, let's say, extract the blocks, right, or point the blocks that are having the given type. But we have a question from Mr. Wozniak.
Okay.
Are you ready for the question before you go into next tip?
Yeah, sure.
I wish you could explain nested properties type.
Nested properties type. What do you mean? Nested properties.
Nested properties. Do we have such a phenomenon in TypeScript, or it is different named? Maybe Mr. Wozniak will explain later what he exactly means, and you can continue.
Okay. I might just if you can explain what you mean by this, or maybe give some example, I would try to explain, but I'm not sure if I know how. We'll see. Okay, so let's say that we have. This is actually again from the actual my code base. We had an API that returned us different posts, either from Twitter or from Facebook or from Instagram. So usually each post had ID, which was a string. It had a type, which was also a string, and depending on which kind of post was it, it had different other fields. So let's say Twitter would have maybe a link or post link, which would be a string. And let's say Instagram would have an images would be which would be like an object of medium and original string, something like this, right? So first of all, the type in such cases usually it's not just any string, it's a specific string, right? Because usually if this is a post of given type, like the endpoint returns you a specific value. So we would type it as a string literal type, like this would be a Twitter, and this would be an Instagram. And again, let's say we have this function that takes a item which is either a Twitter item or an Instagram item. And again, if I try to do some logic here, it only allows me to use the common properties. So if I pick a type and compare it to, let's say, Facebook, it doesn't make sense at this point. So you can see that this comparison is really like it doesn't make sense. So TypeScript doesn't allow me to do the obvious false if. So instead, it will allow me to just pick one of those possible values. And if I pick, let's say, Instagram, I can now return item, and I have images here, and I can do something with those. And again, in the second case, I only have a post link because that was my second possibility. So another quite practical type card, really.
Okay, Tomek, we have two new questions. Maciej asks, can we use double equals in any situation in TypeScript? Probably he's referring how safe is to use this kind of double, which is not type
again. This is
safe.
this is my like practical approach. I have no idea because I've never tried to do it. So I think you can. Probably there is in most projects you will end up discussing with TS-lint, which will probably have in recommended settings to turn it off. Let's see. Yeah. So, but other than that, it works as with normal JavaScript. So I think the answer is yes. As you can see, it still works. The logic works. It's just that TS-lint complains about this being not recommended comparison.
Okay, Mr. Woznik has given us a little bit more insight. If We can try to understand his question. Example, we have interface with rich objects. Let's create subject, and we want to use rx pluck to get observable of one part of that object. How to guard pluck to accept nested keys and have correct return?
Pluck to have nested keys. So I believe that pluck can figure out the type of the value for given key just by the string names. Yeah, I honestly I don't have either an example or I think a succinct explanation or answer for this. So, but that's a good question. I will note it and try to add this as an example, maybe in the notes later. Okay, because
so we can expect this in your awesome Twitter feed tomorrow.
yeah. Tip for today. Nested pluck.
Okay, Piotr asks, could you tell us, please, a little bit more about generics? So, do you have some tips about generics?
So generics in practice, as I said before, whenever you have a piece of algorithm that can return different things, you can expect it to be generic. And for example, even in Angular like 2 and early 4 versions, I was really wondering why they didn't type HTTP GET as a generic. But after that, with 4.3, when they introduced HTTP client, yeah, they figured it out, I guess, and put it as a generic also. And in practice also, when you see in your own code this kind of general functionality, it's good to think about it if you can change it as to a generic. And I actually have kind of example for this. So this is one of the examples we do also on the workshops usually. So there is this very universal, let's say, not to say general all the time, but universal piece of functionality that just allows you to save some object. It can be like this bookmark thing can be a user, a book, a movie, or something. And so it doesn't have much, requirements. It just needs to have an ID. So in the rest of my code, when I inject this and do some logic with this service, let's say this bookmark service, add this shows something like this. Shows is of type show, and show is much bigger object, but it really fits the requirement, right? So it does have the ID, which is of type number, and my bookmark needed an ID which would be either a type of number or string. So it works. But if I tried the other way around, so let's say this shows equals this bookmark service. Oh, this is a stream. Sorry. Let's make it a public. Okay, this bookmark service items. So if I added something that is more precise to this one was more precise to a more, let's say, loose requirements, it works, but the other way around, it doesn't. So if my service returns me like this more general kind of thing, and I wanted more specific, TypeScript complains. So what you could do is you could cast it to this show, and TypeScript will allow you to do it unless it's clear that you cannot. So for example, if this bookmarks ID would be an object and you expect show ID to be a number, this kind of casting would not be possible. But in general, it's if you have like more general thing and you want more specific, you can do this as and cast it, right? So, but in this part of the application, where I deal with entirely the shows object, I would have to do this casting all the time. So this bookmark service is too general for me. So I instead I would change it to be a generic class. All right. So instead of bookmark everywhere, what's the shortcut here? I usually recently work with WebStorm, and I'm missing my shortcuts. But yeah, let's type it as a generic everywhere. Bookmark. This is a bookmark. Okay. And now what I can do is I can say that in this case, this will work as a bookmark service for shows, right? And I don't have to do the casting anymore because it already knows that it returns me the show, right? So it's basically an easier API for those general functionalities. By the way, if you maybe notice, there is one bug here, and it's complaining that ID does not exist on type T. And that's because this generic is actually too general. So it could be anything. It could be a number, right? So it would not have an ID. So again, it's like a type guard in practice. So I can tell this generic, define this generic as something that at least implements this bookmark interface, because I need it to have this ID property required. So I would say that this T extends bookmark.
So we want to have at least this kind of interface, right? The bookmark has
ID.
Yes.
So any type which at least have all the things that the bookmark requires will be a correct generic type for this.
So Java, right?
yeah. If you just jump into this kind of code, you will be shocked probably. And even better, because sometimes you actually have this kind of general use case, and we, for example, we do like buttons for adding bookmarks and removing bookmarks, and the buttons don't really care about you know the specific type. They just need the object with an ID again. So I don't want to have this bookmark service of bookmark type, because this seems really redundant. So what you can do actually is provide a default type for the generic. So as you usually with all the defaults that we now have with ES6 and onwards, you can just say that it equals by default a bookmark. Yeah, so again, just to summarize, this is a generic that at least expects this structure. And if no structure is defined when we use it, it will assume that it will work on a bookmark structure, right? So now I don't have to provide this type here. But again, I need to like this.
Okay, we have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you extend from any type, but that any type has at least ID property?
Can you extend?
Can you extend from any type, but that any type has at least ID property?
So you can extend only from. You cannot extend from types generally. Like if you have a type, which would be like something, and it would be an ID. You cannot put it here. It needs to be an interface, I believe. But in general, it can be like, let's say, because I think what the question was about is if this show needs to extend bookmark interface somewhere, or if it can be just any interface written from scratch. We just needed to have an ID property. So in that case, yes, it can be any type that just defines that it has the ID, which is of specific, like here bookmark requires ID to be string or number. So unless the ID of your type is different, then it's okay. So if it's either ID a string or number, you can use it for this kind of generic. Phew. Yeah, generics.
Generics. So
quite useful, especially when you work with build a library, or the general functionality in overall, right? Hence the name.
Okay, guys. So Tomek, I believe you have a lot of more actually tips. So
Yeah.
we have like exceeded an usual hour of the show. So I think that we can just encourage guys to ask a couple of more questions. And
Okay.
Tomek, why don't you show us like one more which you find like super cool, you personally enjoy it, and then it will give time to the audience to ask some questions.
Okay, so maybe to speed things up, I will just show the examples that I prepared before. So specifically for Angular apps, when you have routes that are more complex and often have a lot of parameters, then it's good to define the types for those, or define interfaces that describes those parameters. As you can see, I have a route here, and I have two params, but maybe I worked on an application that had even like 6 different, dynamic segments. So you define an interface for it, type all the, all things as a strings, because there will be a string. And later when you use it in your in other places where you use your route snapshot or just route params as an observable, you cast it as those specific interfaces, and you have type checked at this point. And actually, one more tip: if you have, it's one of the, I think, more awesome tips. So if you have an response from the API, as you can see, it's pretty big object. This is one huge object, and you probably want to have this structure of this object. There are a couple of things you can do to easily type it as interfaces. The easiest one is to go to JSON to TS. Oh, or JSON
Oh, I
Good,
thought
yes.
I thought it was the demo effect, but you just missed the.
Neither works.
Okay.
Okay, I had a backup, but I have a second backup as well.
Tomek,
So usually,
did you pray to demo gods before the show?
no, they are angry with me, and I'm angry with them. So
Okay.
yeah, demo gods, damn it. But actually, I have this. I have this somewhere. Yeah, this is the one that I wanted to show you, but on steroids, really. There is this application called, or service really, QuickType.io, and you passed it your JSON file. You pick a language, like a TypeScript, and as you can see, you have all the interfaces, and they even, generate some like parsers for you. Maybe I don't want parsers here, but interfaces are actually pretty cool. So it can figure out the naming, if you have like a plural name, it can create a singular interface for it. It can treat specific values as an enum or as a string, so you can actually configure it somewhere.
QuickType.io, that's a useful tool.
Yeah, and there's they actually provide a plugin for VS Code. So if you it was I don't have it installed on this machine, but basically you just copy it to your clipboard, press Control Shift V, and it already passed the whole set of interfaces ready for you. You just need to name the root interface, because JSON. You never know what the root object is called, right? I'm trying to scroll to the very beginning, but So you just this one is in this case always called welcome. I would call it like show,
Cool.
And in my application. So this shaves off solid couple of minutes of like stupid work of just typing your API responses.
Great. We will post the links to those examples. I mean, also this application, QuickType.io. But in the meantime, Sergey asked, please tell us about read-only class properties. Do they have any advantages versus private?
Well, they are even that they have in short, they are, I would say, even different, because read only are generics that allows you to prevent object from mutation. So let's say if I do like this, and I said that this person is, let's say it would be interface, that would require name and age. Now person is just an interface of person. I provide the name, age, infinity, and even if though this is a const, I can still mutate the values, right? I can say that the name is right, something like this, but I can type it as a read only.
I remember that tweet of yours, Tomek, with read only. This is magic.
Yeah, and there is also a similar thing to read only. There is a read only array also, which is even more magical, because this what it really does, this one, is it adds like read only in front of every field. It's flat. thing. It's an important thing to note, right? If I had like an address and this address had a street, I would still be able to mutate the street, right? So read-only person just marks this, and this as read-only, but not street, right? So read-only as for object just marks the immediate properties of those objects as read-only, but read-only on arrays just removes all the mutation methods on arrays. So this is even more magic, right? If I said that A is a read-only array of number, I cannot I can slice, but I can't splice, right? So because slice doesn't mutate, just returns, but splice, yeah, there is no splice here. And that's because it's a read-only. If it was an array, it a possible method, right? Array is here, read-only, array is not. So yeah, my general, more general maybe tip is to for you to look out on those like utility generic types, because there are several more. But I think the read-only and read-only array is like the biggest ones in the in the age when mutation is frowned upon.
Whoa, I feel pumped with new knowledge. Guys, do you have any other questions? Because I see not. Let's wait, maybe. Tomek, how are you feeling after over an hour of pumping out with these super tips?
I always afraid that I will either take like 20 minutes or 2 hours by talking. I always think that it will be just too short, but then after an hour we just halfway there. Yeah, but I'm happy that we have some viewers and we were able to share this, and it will be available after, right? The recording
I mean,
as well.
I think that the YouTube will now process the stream, and after a while it will be available, like, for sure to share.
Cool, great.
Okay, one more question. Thanks to Andrew.
Sorry, could you repeat that, because I was disconnected for the whole question?
Yeah, because again my cable disconnected. So Tomek, can you hear me right now?
Yes.
So
tomorrow.
Cool. Yeah, I guess we were offline during your response. So I would just rephrase it that yes, Tomek will share with you the recommendation, and I think that we can finish for today. I mean, it was very nice to have you, Tomek, and I believe people would really like to have you one more time, and probably would like to follow you on Twitter to be on the top of the new tips that you share. So I will also post your Twitter handle so that they can follow you. And once again, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Just thanks for having me. And tomorrow probably I will put like 2 or 3 tips because of what the questions were here, and I already have one prepared. So thanks again.
Okay, bye bye.